Good evening and welcome to Newsmax Prime. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Of prime interest tonight, a pair of cabinet picks. One of them, a doctor turned congressman. The other, a Senate wife who's so much more. The way I see it, it's good to see people I know and people who I know will do a good job named to the Trump cabinets. Let's mind our manners and mention the lady first. Elaine Chao spent all 8 years of the George W. Bush administration as the Secretary of Labor. Now she will labor as the Secretary of Transportation for Mr. Trump. And Secretary Chao can expect a comparatively easy confirmation in the Senate. You see, her husband is Republican leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, but she did not get this job because of her spouse. It's worth noting she was the longest-serving cabinet officer for Bush 43 and is a capable and proven administrator. For Health and Human Services, Mr. Trump made a house call and picked one of the doctors in the House. Congressman and orthopedic surgeon Tom Price will lead what we might call an Obamacare-ectomy. Dr. Price drafted legislation that offered an alternative to the abomination currently masquerading as medical policy, and he will join the executive branch intent on making Obamacare extinct. Serving alongside Tom Price in the House, I got to know a man who is much more than a brilliant surgeon and effective congressman. I got to know a man who grew up in a one-parent household. One morning at our weekly congressional prayer breakfast, Dr. Tom spoke movingly of his mom and the sacrifices she made for the success he's enjoyed. I doubt it'll come up during his confirmation hearing, but I wanted you to know. Tom Price is not a mama's boy, but he is a man who learned well from a loving mother. And that's the way I see it. For more on the transition, we're pleased to be joined via Skype from Southern California by Republican strategist and host of the eponymously named Andrea Kaye Show, the one and only Andrea Kaye. And we're joined via Skype from Bonita Springs, Florida, by the former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Pete Hoekstra. Pete's now a Shillman Senior Fellow for the Investigative Project on Terrorism, and he is the author of the book, Architects of Disaster, the Destruction of Libya. Rather than talking about destructive things, let's talk about something constructive, specifically these cabinet picks. Pete Hoekstra, first, Elaine Chao. We noted her bona fides earlier. It is also worth noting that she is the first Asian American woman to ever hold a cabinet level position, and this marks her return to a Republican administration.
Very, very solid pick, J.D. I think it just falls in line with what Mr. Trump has been doing and putting together a solid cabinet. We're going to be seeing a lot of activity coming out of the Transportation Department in innovative ways with his infrastructure proposal, which I think will lean heavily on public-private partnerships. She's got the experience. She's got the credentials to be a very, very effective Secretary of Transportation.
And Andrea, since Television City in Hollywood is not far from where you joined us via Skype, all the cable nets today were using that trite but true line, the price is right, the price is right. In this case, Dr. Tom Price, and he is absolutely right for this job.
Yeah, he is. And by the way, I love that background that you told about him because, I hadn't heard that about him, that he came from a single mom household. And it reminds me of another great American doctor, and hopefully he's going to have a spot in the administration, and that's Dr. Ben Carson. I love this pick, and in part because I didn't even have to Google him and learn anything about his background to know what a great pick he was. I could just hear from all the way out here on the left coast, all the way out there to the East Coast, the hysteria on the part of the left by this pick. That's when you know you're on the right track, Donald J. Trump, with your picks. When you got the left, you got up Chuck Schumer, like all upset over this pick. Well done, Donald Trump.
Well, it's interesting the name you give to Senator Schumer, the Democrat leader, Andrea. Of course, Pete and I, for purposes of full disclosure, during our days in the House with then Congressman Schumer, we referred to him as Chuckles. And it is worth noting, Pete, that Chuckles is not chuckling about the pick of Dr. Price. Here is what our website, Newsmax.com, quotes Senator Schumer as saying, quote, nominating Congressman Price to be the HHS secretary is akin to asking the fox to guard the hen house, close quote. Chuckles went on to call our friend Tom someone who is so far out of the mainstream of what Americans want when it comes to health care. Pete, do they never come up with a new script? The same old trite and tired talking points.
It's the same old tired talking points. Tom Price is going to do a phenomenal job. And I think Mr. Trump is picking the right kind of people. He's picking a fighter in this area. Why? Because he wants to dismantle Obamacare and put it back in the hands of the American citizens so that they can pick their doctors, they can pick their health care, and those types of things. So he's putting a fighter in that position. In the infrastructure job, the transportation secretary, he's putting a consensus builder, because I think in many ways he believes that that's a program that can be a bipartisan type of effort. He's putting the right type of people with the right types of personalities in the jobs that he needs them to do.
Elaine, I guess it's almost like with Andrea. I was thinking about Elaine getting that pick and her confirmation. I made mention of the fact that her spouse is Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader. And if you look at the pattern of selections now, it seems like for every one widely regarded pick, Chuck Schumer and the Democrats go after the corresponding pick. We heard it about Jeff Sessions. We're hearing it now about Tom Price. But in terms of the schedule and what Pete just said, are we looking at a situation where Elaine Chao may be the first cabinet-level official confirmed in the Senate?
Well, she certainly should be confirmed speedily and quickly. And by the way, I got to tell you, I had forgotten that she was married to Mitch McConnell. It almost makes me feel better about him because, first of all, she is stunning. Can I just say, on behalf of conservative women, I think that we are far better looking. There, I said it. I think she is beautiful. And she's got brains on top of it. You look at her resume and what she's done and what she's about. I love anybody that's been a headache to the unions at any point. I love the fact that she's got philanthropic, nonprofit background to her. She's Harvard educated. This is a woman who left the Bloomberg organization because she didn't like that their initiative was about stopping coal-fired plants. I mean, is there anything that you can complain about with this woman? Oh, yeah, here come the Never Trumpers today saying, oh, I thought Trump was going to drain the swamp. Well, yeah, he is going to drain the swamp. But you know what? I come from the swampland, and we know that there's good creatures. There's friendly creatures in the swamp. She's one of them. She should fly through.
All right, we will take that within the context of the fact that you went to school at LSU, because some uncharitable headline writers might say something about Elaine being a swamp creature. But if she were in the swamp, she would be a lovely swan. Now, I'm just getting in more trouble with this imagery here. Well, let me get to another vacancy, and that remains Secretary of State. Now, Pete, Bob Corker of Tennessee was over at the Trump Tower earlier today, and he made his star turn and stopped to talk to reporters about the importance of the vacant position. Let's look and listen.
The Secretary of State's role is so important to a president. He needs to choose someone that he's very comfortable with, that he knows there's going to be no daylight between him and them. The world needs to know that the Secretary of State is someone who speaks fully for the president.
All right, so, and look, we know that Brother Corker was out there early compared to a lot of the senators on the Trump train. But Pete, there is one thing that really bothers me, that piece of legislation that he and Lindsey Graham worked on that allowed President Obama to fast-track this horrible nuclear deal with Iran. Do you share any reservations about Bob Corker moving over to the State Department should he be Donald Trump's selection?
Well, Bob Corker is going to have to make the decision as to if he's selected, or if he's selected, that he then has to make sure that there is no daylight between him and Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump said he wants to dismantle the Iranian agreement. Bob Corker at one time seemed to be maybe not an advocate, but at least a facilitator of that agreement. And the same thing goes for Senator Corker, is what goes for Mr. Romney, is what goes for John Bolton. They're going to have to set aside their personal agendas and to put in place Mr. Trump's agenda, or they will hear the famous words, "You're fired." And so, he's casting a wide net as he's picking his Secretary of State, but whoever it is going to have to set aside their personal agenda.
Of course, dinner tonight with Mitt Romney, but yesterday, Andrea, it was General David Petraeus who stopped by Trump Tower. Obviously, there is still controversy surrounding General Petraeus. We recall what happened, sharing classified information with a biographer who became his mistress. Can he get past that, given his expertise, given his Princeton bona fides, as well as his military experience? We've got about a minute left.
Well, I'm going to depart from some of my conservative friends, and I actually think that there should be a spot for him in the administration. I think he does have an amazing grasp on the world and the enemies that we face and the world players. But I think that what he did in regards to the classified information, I think should prohibit him from becoming Secretary of State. I think it's just a cloud and a scandal that the Trump administration doesn't need, and puts Trump in a position of seeming a little hypocritical when it comes to some of his criticisms of Hillary Clinton. So for me, I think there's other people that should be more at the top of the list.
Fair enough. Andrea and Pete, we will ask you both to stay right there, and wherever you're watching, we want you to stay with us, because when we come back, the FBI is now investigating the Somalian refugee and Ohio State student who attacked so many people yesterday with an SUV and a butcher knife. And they're still asking the question, could it be terrorism? And also on the campus in Columbus, a disturbing episode of political correctness. All of that's ahead, and we continue our discussion with Andrea Kaye and Pete Hoekstra. So keep it right here.